Greetings and welcome back to Pseudo's journey through the Japanese air tech tree in War Thunder, a series of subpar guides made for unskilled free-to-play players by an unskilled free-to-play player. This magnificent day, we shall be looking at the next incremental upgrade to the torpedo bomber line in the Japanese air tech tree, the B6N1 Model 11. The B6N1 Model 11 can be found at battle rating 1.7 and rank 1 in the 4th line of the Japanese air tech tree. The B6N1 Model 11 is the direct successor of the B5N2 found at the start of the torpedo/dive bomber line. As you will see as we go further down this line of the tree, there are a lot of small upgrades to the base airframe which cause the plane to be played a little differently and warrant different battle ratings. In the case of the B6N1 Model 11, it builds on the B5N2 in that it upgrades the engines and the armaments on the plane. However, there is a nearly 50% increase in weight from the B5N2. This leads to some noticeable changes in flight performance. Like the B5N2, the B6N1 Model 11 has surprisingly good performance for a light bomber. The turn radius is simply sublime, allowing it to turn on a dime, though actually slightly worse than the B5N2 from what I found. The energy retention is also surprisingly good for a dive bomber, in the horizontal. You will notice that the energy retention in the horizontal is good, but that you will lose much more energy in a turn than other Japanese fighters. The energy retention in the vertical, however, is not great. Overall, in regards to turn performance and energy, you will see that this plane is better than most dive bombers, but worse than many Japanese fighters in the tree. Similarly to many other Japanese prop planes, the turn performance is best at low altitudes, typically within about 1 to 2 kilometers of sea level. This is all very similar to the B5N2 in regards to how it will play in the game. One of the first major differences seen in the B6N1 Model 11 is the upgraded Nakajima Mamoru 11 engine it hosts. This engine is a fairly major upgrade, even after accounting for the fact that the B6N1 is 1.4 tons heavier than the N2. This gives it decent speeds in a straight line and a little bit better energy retention in a sustained turn. Again, for a dive bomber. Don't expect to be outrunning fighters apart from biplanes. The upgrade is relatively slight, but you'll likely realize it when you play around with it for a bit. The climb rate is decent, but you get a full air spawn, so that likely won't matter in game too often. A few issues with the performance are the roll rate and durability. The roll rate feels sluggish and really reminds you that this is a dive bomber and not a fighter. The durability is better than that of many Japanese planes at this rank, but that is a low bar, and the durability is fairly low compared to many other similar planes in the game. A few shots from pretty much any gun will take it out of the sky. Another issue is the large hitbox. You will be a much easier target than most people will be for you. This, combined with the aforementioned relatively flimsy airframe, leads to you being a fairly easy airplane to get guns on and shoot down. As mentioned earlier, the much heavier airframe will also be quite noticeable if you play the B6N1 Model 11 right after the B5N2 in nearly all its performance metrics, but the new engine does help a good bit with that. The mechanization is actually fairly important for the B6N1. It has takeoff, landing, and combat flaps, which tear at a fairly low speed of only 280 km per hour IAS. Even with the higher weight, the takeoff speeds are fairly quick and the takeoff flaps are really only needed for carrier takeoffs. The combat flaps are very nice for getting a little bit of extra turn at lower speeds once you've already burned a decent amount of energy in a turn fight and have become sluggish. As a warning, this will further drain your energy, meaning that you want to be really sure that you need that extra little bit of turn performance. The gears can be put down at about 310 km per hour. The B6N1 does get a hook for carrier landings, which you will only occasionally, if ever, get to use. Importantly for a dive bomber, the B6N1 Model 11 doesn't get an air brake. This is actually a bit of a problem for the B6N1. Dive bombers typically dive, get it, like the name, towards a target, drop the bombs, and pull up. Without an air brake, this means that you will not only have less time and a harder time trying to line up the bomb drops, but the pull-up part of the dive bombing formula typically does not occur. The max speed of 650 km per hour at which your plane reverse engineers itself also arrives much quicker in a dive than you might hope when you don't have an air brake. This all combined with fairly standard control lockup at high speeds means that the B6N1 won't be doing standard dive bombing techniques. But to make up for this, you do get a fairly nice optical bomb sight. As such, you'll likely end up doing bombing runs, much more similar to a conventional large bomber, despite being built much more similarly to a dive bomber. Onto what is likely the biggest upgrade from the B5N2, the B6N1 Model 11 actually gets an offensive gun. However, this is a single 7.7mm Type 97 machine gun with 400 rounds. This is a similar horrendous 7.7mm machine gun to the ones that can be found on other Japanese planes of this rank. It will take numerous rounds to shoot down very light fighters. You do get several belts, but it really doesn't matter which belt you use, as none of them will do much damage. It might actually be best to use the tracers, as it might be better at scaring enemies off, much like trying to scare a grizzly bear away by chucking fireflies at it. And not only that, but this single machine gun is placed very far off center on the left wing of the plane. This makes the gun even harder to get kills with, as you'll have to factor that in as you need to aim a noticeable amount off to the right of an enemy when they're closer than your convergence point, and far to the left when they're farther away. The cyclic rate of this gun is also very slow, meaning that in a turn fight, enemies will frequently just fly between your rounds. Combine the terrible damage, incredible difficulty to aim, and the low cyclic rate, and the gun and ammo end up being little more than dead weight. The B6N1 Model 11 does get two defensive guns. It sports two 7.7mm Type 92 machine guns. One sits facing rearwards above the tail of the plane, and one faces rearwards under the tail of the plane. This allows for decent gunner coverage pretty much anywhere behind the plane, except for directly behind the plane due to the vertical stabilizer blocking the view. If an enemy ends up there, try to lightly activate the rudder or elevator to get them in sight of one of your gunners. However, these are similarly pathetic guns to the forward armament with an even worse rate of fire, and as such, their best use is nothing more than a deterrent for enemies. Don't expect to actually get any kills with them. The B6N1 Model 11 makes up for pretty much all its shortcomings with its excellent ordnance loadouts. It pretty much carries the exact same loadouts that the B5N2 has apart from the AP bomb. It can carry 6 60kg Navy Type 97 No. 6 bombs, 2 250kg Navy Type No. 25 Model 2 bombs, 1 800kg Navy Type No. 80 Model 1 bomb, 1 835kg Type 91 Model 2 torpedo, or 1 850kg Type 91 Model 3 torpedo. In air battles, only the 800kg bomb can destroy a base, so that should be your weapon of choice there. In ground battles, both the 250kg bombs and the 800kg bomb will serve you well. The 800kg bomb is something you drop to remove everything in a general direction. The 250kg bombs require a bit more accuracy, but at this battle rating they are still massive bombs and have the added benefit that you get 2 drops with them. Both of the torpedoes are absolutely fantastic, as Japanese torpedoes typically are, and either can take out nearly any ship at this battle rating with a single hit. The Model 3 is a direct upgrade over the Model 2, so always take the Model 3 whenever possible. Both can be dropped at very high speeds compared to many other torpedoes, which is incredibly useful in-game. On to the playstyle for the B6N1 Model 11. This is actually a very interesting plane as it has a fairly strong role in air, ground, and naval battles. This makes it an incredibly versatile plane, which you can play in numerous different ways. In air battles, this plane is probably actually at its weakest. Again, the 800kg bomb is the only one that can destroy a base, so take it if you're planning on doing base bombing. The major issue is that while your turn performance is decent and you do get much more weaponry than the B5N2, it will still have a hard time tangoing with enemy aircraft. As explained earlier, both the forward and defensive guns are little more than a deterrent for enemies. You shouldn't expect to be able to go up against most fighters and win. You do get an air spawn though, which dramatically increases your options. My recommendation is to take the 800kg bomb, climb, and drop on a base. Then go and fight enemy interceptors who also get an air spawn. You have the altitude, so use it and choose from your targets wisely. Enemy interceptors are a good choice as you will generally outperform them. Don't engage fighters unless necessary as they will still likely outperform you, and don't target bombers as you will not be able to bring them down before their defensive gunners get you. In ground battles, the B6N1 Model 11 is simply excellent. It has great turn performance, bomb loads, and a bomb sight. You can dance around the battlefield with little worry. Pretty much every bomb you drop should be a near guaranteed kill at this battle rating. Remember to take either the 250 kilogram bombs or the 800 kilogram bomb depending on how you feel about your bomb dropping accuracy. The only real issue you'll encounter is enemy fighters, but you still might be able to outturn them and either scare them away with your gunners or lead them towards your team's SPAA. For tactics, line up a good pass at medium to low altitudes over the battlefield, look for a target who isn't moving, and fly over them and drop a bomb with your bomb sight. Couldn't be easier. Immediately start turning and climbing after the drop to avoid SPAA fire if there is any. This plane feels like it was made for this, because it kind of was. In naval battles, this is honestly one of the best torpedo bombers in game. Currently, the naval AA batteries, even at lower ranks, are a near impenetrable field of doom. The only way to avoid it is to flank and fly incredibly low, usually at about 15 meters up from the water at most. This plane actually excels at this tactic. Combine this with great agility in a relatively small size and the ability to drop fantastic torpedoes at nearly your maximum straight line speed, and you get a deadly torpedo bomber. The torpedoes are fairly slow, so I recommend aiming at about 2 to 3 ship lengths ahead of the enemy and dropping from less than 1 kilometer away. After you drop, stick close to the water and slowly start turning back towards your airfield. Don't pop up until you are a few kilometers away. If you do this, you have a hope of making it back alive. A hit to any boat pretty much anywhere at this BR with these torpedoes will absolutely vaporize them. This is one of the best torpedo bombers in the game, in my opinion. The takeoff and landing procedures are fairly simple. The B6N1 Model 11 is noticeably heavier than the B5N2, so you will need a little more runway to take off, and the flaps might actually be pretty nice. Landing is similarly easy, though it may still be a little more tricky due to the higher weight and weak brakes. You do get an arrestor hook and may actually need to do carrier takeoffs and landings, so I'll go over those here. While landing, you want to be going very slow and pretty much level with the carrier deck. You want to make sure that you hit your stall speed of about 150 kilometers per hour right as you reach the deck. A perfect landing should look something like this. Like a glove. In all seriousness, this will take some practice. Use your landing flaps for better slow speed control and learn to properly align yourself without smacking the wheels into the deck. For takeoffs, you actually need to be fairly careful due to the weight of the plane, especially when loaded with a bomb or a torpedo. Slam on the throttle to full WEP to gain as much speed as you can before lifting off, and deploy takeoff flaps right as you get to the edge of the flight deck to get the needed lift to take off. If you do this, you should be able to avoid falling into the cold below. The visuals of the B6N1 Model 11 are very nice. The torpedo bomber line for Japan has some aircraft which just look incredibly sleek in terms of their airframes for the time. It doesn't have as many of the nice red and white accents of the B5N2, but it still looks fairly nice with the standard Japanese dark green paint scheme. It only has its default paint job. The cockpit on the B6N1 is fairly nice to play with. Remember, I really never play first person, so this is all a subjective view from somebody who has no idea what they are talking about. The cockpit is very large and sits relatively high on the plane. You have fairly good visibility in all directions and exceptional visibility backwards. The wings are a little large, but they're not too much of a problem. Honestly, this cockpit makes me feel like I'm sitting in a greenhouse. The gun sight, though, is absolutely awful. This gun sight almost rivals that of the Kika in how bad it is. The gun was added to suppress naval AA batteries and not for dogfighting, and the gun sight mirrors that intended functionality. If you play this one first person, don't expect to get any hits at all with the main gun. The cost of the B6N1 Model 11 is 5,900 RP to research and 4,410 SL to purchase. It has a crew slot cost of 1,800 SL, bringing us up to a total cost of 6,210 SL to purchase and slot this plane. The repair cost is 427 SL in arcade battles and 624 SL in realistic battles. This is a bit higher than you might be used to, but you should be making a good amount of SL from bombing bases to make up for these losses. The modifications are fairly simple. Rush the bombs. Get the first 2 torpedo mods, then the compressor to help with speed. Then get the 250 kilogram bombs, then the engine, then the 800 kilogram bomb. After this, go back and get the engine injection, cover, and airframe modifications. Then get the rest of the performance mods. If you do feel like you're bursting into flames when an enemy looks at you funny, you can get the EFS module earlier on. However, I've found that if you're in a situation where you're getting set on fire, your plane likely won't last long enough for the EFS module to matter with how flimsy you are. Then, get the gun upgrades, as they really won't help too much. That's all I have for you on the B6N1 Model 11. I know that this isn't the biggest upgrade from the B5N2, but it does have a few slight upgrades, mainly the guns, which make a noticeable change in how it can be played. I hope you like this airframe, as we have 2 more slight upgrades of the B6N family which we will be covering in a future video, which are, sadly, a return to form and throughout the forward armament, which really isn't too much of a loss. I'd be honored to see you next time, where we'll be covering an intriguing plane with the airframe of a heavy bomber and the weapon with the caliber of a tank, the Key 109. Whether you're there or not, I thank you for tuning in today.